Hello, my name is Brian Champion. Welcome to my video on how I create full disc, high resolution solar images. I use a Celestron C8 8-inch telescope with a 2000 millimeter focal length and a custom adapter plate I made to mount Coronado Solar Max 3 Etalons on. I also use the blocking filter from the Coronado telescope. The Etalons are tilt tune, which means there's a small knob on each one to be able to adjust the tilt angle of the Etalon to fine-tune the wavelength I wish to capture. This telescope is mounted on a permanent pier in my backyard roll-off roof observatory, so I can track the sun all day if I want to. In this image you can see the entire setup, the scope with the Etalons and the custom adapter plate mounted to the telescope. On the back side of the telescope there is the blocking filter and then the camera. Do not point a telescope at the sun unless you fully understand what you're doing. Immediate eye or camera damage will occur without proper filters. By using the hand controller from my telescope mount, I can slew the telescope towards the sun. By using the manual buttons on the hand controller and this small finder scope, I can fine-tune the telescope's position on the sun. This is a live image from my camera on my computer screen. You can see some of the various features of the sun as I slew the telescope around. You can see some of the prominences already around the outer edge. The dark ribbon-like structures are called filaments. And here I increase the gain on the camera so you can see the prominences better. Now I'll slew around the outer edge to be able to see the prominences. You can see some are very faint and wispy looking. To capture all the panels, I manually move the telescope with the hand controller in a grid pattern of 4 columns and 6 rows with about a 20% overlap between each panel. Using SharpCap, I capture 500 frames per panel. After all the images are taken, I use AutoStacker 3 to analyze and stack the best 25% of the images for each panel. This is a playback of 500 frames for one panel. The movement you see is due to atmospheric disturbances. This technique is called lucky imaging because some of the frames are good and some end up blurry due to this movement. Once all the frames for each panel are sorted and stacked, I load them into PT GUI Pro, a panorama stitching program. PT GUI is the best program I've found for creating these full disk solar images. When I click Align Images, PT GUI will align them all to create this full disk. Here you can see the stitching pattern that it uses for each frame. There's also additional controls in PT GUI, but I generally don't use them as I prefer to use Photoshop. I save the images at 16-bit TIFF to give me maximum detail. After the mosaic is created, I use the Solar Toolbox and PixInsight to enhance details and contrast. And here you can see some of the various controls. Prominence boost will increase the brightness of the outer region. Contrast enhancement improves the contrast of the surface details. And here I zoom in on a specific area to check the level of detail for sharpening. And zoom back out to see what the full disk looks like. After editing PixInsight, I bring the image into Photoshop, where I can select the shadow area, and then I select out the prominence areas. For the next steps, you don't want the prominences as part of the disk. Once the selection is cleaned up, I then select Modify and smooth out the selection. I find that smoothing by 100 pixels creates a pretty smooth selection. Then I expand the selection slightly. And using levels, I enhance the prominence area. Now you can really see the details in the prominences. Then I invert the selection. And then invert the image. So this will make the ribbon features called filaments white instead of black. I'll darken the image slightly, and then I'll go through and dodge and burn all the detail areas on the surface to enhance their contrast. Here, using the dodge tool, I brighten up one of the filaments. This process can take a bit. Once all the dodging and burning is done, then I can select curves. I have a predefined profile for getting the orange color. And I generally brighten the image and then brighten the red channel. And here we have the final image. I've labeled some of the various features for identification. You can see prominences, active regions, and filaments. Thank you for watching my process of creating full disk, high resolution solar images.